The global icon of coffeehouse culture has long viewed China as a second home market. But something's changed. Quietly, steadily, Starbucks is losing ground in China. According to our tracked data, Starbucks offline store sales in China have declined on a year-over-year basis since 2024. The average monthly orders per customer have fallen from around 2.5 to just 1.6. Sales are dropping, store traffic is shrinking, and earlier this year, Starbucks even admitted it might sell part of its China business. Meanwhile, a homegrown challenger is rising fast. Luckin Coffee, a coffee chain founded in 2017. Now, if you've heard of Luckin before, it might be because of its fraud scandal in 2020. That year, the company admitted to fabricating over $300 million in sales. Its stock was delisted from Nasdaq, and many assumed that would be the end of the story, but it wasn't. After restructuring its leadership and securing new investors, Luckin pivoted to a franchise-heavy model and leaned even harder into aggressive expansion and digital marketing. In 2022, it surpassed Starbucks in total store count, and by early 2024, it had opened more than 18,000 stores nationwide, more than twice as many as Starbucks in China. And it's not just about scale. Luckin continues to post double-digit growth in order volume and sales. So, what exactly happened? Is this a case of made in China beating a Western brand purely on price? Is this just about nationalism or anti-Western sentiment? Or is there something deeper at play? Let's unpack it. Let's start with the obvious. Price. A basic Americano at Starbucks in China costs around 30 RMB, roughly $4. At Luckin Coffee, thanks to near-constant promotions, you can get the same drink for 9.9 RMB, about $1.30. That's nearly one-third the price, sometimes even less. In cities like Beijing, where the average white-collar monthly salary hovers around 15,700 RMB, a daily Starbucks habit can feel more like a luxury than a necessity. For that same budget, consumers can get 3 times as many drinks elsewhere. And Luckin isn't even the cheapest option out there. In smaller cities and counties, the competition becomes even more intense. Take Lucky Cup, for instance. A flavored coffee brand sells drinks starting at just 5 RMB. That's just 70 cents in US dollar. Perhaps most people outside China haven't heard of Lucky Cup, but it may surprise you that it's owned by Mixue Ice Cream and Tea, a Chinese beverage giant that now operates over 46,000 stores worldwide, outpacing even McDonald's in global store count. Its footprint spans not only China, but Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Australia, and even Latin America. In other words, Luckin isn't an outlier. It's part of a much broader trend. Thanks to dense domestic supply chains, Chinese food and beverage chains are scaling rapidly and exporting their low-cost, high-volume model globally, just like many other made-in-China products. But here's the twist. If you think Chinese consumers are just chasing the cheapest cup, you're missing the bigger picture. China is, historically, a tea-drinking culture. Coffee is still a relatively new habit here, mostly adopted by those under 40. And that's important because it means Chinese consumers never had rigid expectations about what coffee should be. They're flexible, open to new flavors, curious. That's why Luckin's bestsellers aren't Americanos or cappuccinos. In fact, 8 out of its 10 top drinks are coffee-inspired beverages, such as coconut lattes, cheese foam espressos, fruit-infused cold brews. They look more like a milk tea menu, and that's intentional. In fact, many consumers view coffee as a functional alternative to bubble tea. But that doesn't mean China is short of coffee purists. In cities like Shanghai, you'll find hundreds of boutique cafes serving pour-over yirgacheffe, each store with its own distinct vibe, some Japanese minimalist, others industrial retro. Many charge more than Starbucks. So why is Starbucks, which once symbolized premium coffee, getting squeezed from both ends? One reason is that it lacks character. Let's take a step away from the big cities. In Anji, a scenic rural county in Zhejiang province, there are now more cafes per capita than even Shanghai. These aren't chains. They're run by young entrepreneurs who've left the cities behind. Converted barns, abandoned factories, even hillside campsites are now full of thoughtfully designed cafes, some with poetry on the walls, others serving seasonal brews using local ingredients. On April 5th, 2024, a local cafe in Anji served over 8,800 cups in a single day. Why? Because what Gen Z in China wants is not just caffeine. They want experience, story, and a drink that fits into their social media feed. And Starbucks, with its standardized furniture and predictable menu, it feels sterile, frankly speaking. What Starbucks lacks is something that connects with daily life, with personal experiences that feel close to home. For instance, in China, people follow seasonal eating almost religiously. That's why many local coffee shops rotate their menus with the calendar, offering Chinese bayberry or grape Americanos in May and June, and osmanthus lattes in the fall. To outsiders, these flavors might sound unusual, but for many Chinese consumers, they make perfect sense. They're tied to memory, to tradition, just like pumpkin spice feels nostalgic to American or European consumers every autumn. This attention to seasonality, to emotional cues, is everywhere. These drinks don't just taste good, they feel personal. A striking example of what local brands are doing right is the Mao Tai latte. In 2023, Luckin launched a limited edition drink infused with Mao Tai, China's most iconic and most expensive, baijiu, China's national liquor that often associated with state banquets, business deals, and national identity. It's expensive, symbolic, and instantly recognizable across generations. And it worked. The campaign generated massive buzz online. Over 5 million cups were sold within days. So, instead of being just a novelty drink, the launch became a cultural symbol, like if a coffee chain in the US launched a whiskey latte using bourbon whiskey. In fact, Starbucks did try something similar in China. They once launched a whiskey barrel-aged Americano, hoping to create a splash, but unsurprisingly, it barely made a ripple. Maybe decades ago, when Starbucks first entered China, it did create a similar sensation. Back then, Starbucks filled a gap in the market. It offered something China didn't yet have: coffee culture and a westernized lifestyle. Meeting for business or going on a date at Starbucks felt sophisticated. It wasn't just a coffee shop, it was a symbol of status and modernity. But fast forward 20 years, coffee is everywhere. The novelty has worn off. What today's consumers crave is no longer a symbol of globalization. It's localization, personality, and emotional connection. And that's where Starbucks is losing ground. At the end of the day, China is still a tea drinking country. While coffee has grown rapidly in urban areas, most Chinese people still get their caffeine from tea, just in a more modern form. And that's why selling caffeine the Chinese way may be the direction the market is heading. One standout example is Chagee, a premium tea brand that just went public on the NASDAQ earlier this year. Founded in 2017, Chagee focuses on high-end brewed teas, especially milk teas with lower sugar, aimed at health-conscious Gen Z consumers. What makes Chagee different is how it blends Chinese tradition with modern design. Its stores feature wood accents, calligraphy, and colors inspired by traditional opera costumes, but the layout and experience feel sleek and modern, more like a minimalist cafe than a retro tea house. Even its signature drinks are rooted in culture. One popular item is named after an ancient story, Bo Ya breaking the chin strings. It's a tale about a musician who destroys his instrument after the only person who truly understood his music passes away. In China, it's a powerful symbol of deep emotional connection. It might seem like a small detail, but for young Chinese consumers, that cultural depth matters, and the numbers show it's working. According to public data, Chagee's 2024 sales in China have already surpassed Starbucks China, despite only entering the market a few years ago. It's also expanding fast, with over 148 stores overseas, including in Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and most recently, Los Angeles. And even among consumers with no background in Chinese tea culture, it struck a chord. Social media users praised the branding, the packaging, and the taste. For many, the visual appeal alone was enough to walk in and give it a try. So, is Starbucks doomed in China? Not necessarily. It still has prime locations, an established supply chain, and deep brand awareness. But to stay relevant, it needs to do more than lower prices or add a bubble tea or two. It needs to listen. Because in today's China, coffee isn't about the West anymore. It's about China, its tastes, its culture, its daily life, its people. And that may be the biggest change of all. So, what do you think? Can Starbucks adapt to China's new caffeine culture, or is it already too late? Leave a comment below, and if you want more grounded insights into China's evolving market and economy, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell.